Welcome to the World Series edition of Sharing Sox. Notice the Sox aren't actually in the World Series. You perhaps should mention that as a spoiler alert. But
Oh,
yeah,
seriously?
stay. Yeah. I'm
Oh,
Southside Sox duty geezer Leigh Allan. With me, my son and West Coast correspondent wearing an Arizona Diamondbacks hat, Will, who is probably footsore from working picket line for 103 days now.
yeah,
For
yeah.
the Screen Actors Guild as they march on into maybe nothing as we go on. World Series time. I take it from the Arizona hat that you are rooting for the Diamondbacks.
I thought long and hard about this. I really sat down and I thought about it. And, because I root for the Dodgers out here, I was holding this like, oh, I can't root for the Diamondbacks thing. I can't root for the Diamondbacks. They're in our division. They knocked us out. But then I reflected on the two teams. And if there's any team in recent memory that plays baseball the way I like it, it's the Arizona Diamondbacks. So,
I share that with you. As you know, I'm a speed guy. I love speed, and they lead the majors in things like stolen bases and triples. And I haven't looked at stats on going first to third, but they probably do that as well. Uh,
yeah, yeah.
uh, it's yeah. I will join you in rooting for them. I think Texas is a much better team. Uh,
But are they? So here's my thing. But are they? And this we talk about this a lot because everyone says like, "Oh, every other team was better than the Diamondbacks and they made it to the World Series." But they made it to the World Series with a bunch of 23-year-olds and a couple 40-year-olds. And I mean,
true.
it's hard to say that that is not a good team. I get when you not that you're saying that they're not a good team, but I get that when you get into the bench, it's a little like, okay, we've got Pavin Smith. However, Pavin Smith, I think, is hitting like 400 in the playoffs, and I didn't know who Pavin Smith was.
I think he
I,
about hit about 120 during the season. So.
I've watched like 10 Diamondbacks games in person this year, and when Pavin Smith came up to bat in the NLDS, I was like, who the heck is this guy? He does not look like he belonged to Major League Baseball, but there he is. I think this Diamondbacks team is currently the best team in baseball, and you outlined a lot of reasons for that. The speed, the defense, I mean, they're hitting, and then also the starting pitchers that they're going to have going in these first few games. I mean, you're going to have Zach Gallen, Merrill Kelly, and Brandon Pfaadt,
Out of
who
nowhere. Talk about
who
out of nowhere.
this guy has played 19 games of Major League Baseball. He has played 19 games of Major League Baseball. In the regular season, it was Brandon Fart for all practical purposes. There was certainly no point where you thought this guy's throwing game 7 of the NLCS. And here he is, and he looks like the guy the Diamondbacks always thought he was going to be. I mean, he's young still, of course. He's very young, but seeing a rookie pan out like this in the playoffs is often the storyline of the team that wins it. You either have these teams like the Yankee teams that had 5 starters who you were comfortable with pitching in the World Series. But a lot of times when it's not a team like the Yankees, or the Astros these days, it is these rookies. It is these guys who you did not expect to show up big time. And it wouldn't be a big deal if they didn't show up big time because they're 24 and you don't know how they're going to do on that stage. Brandon Pfaadt is acting like he's ready to be Madison Bumgarner from 2012, 2014. Like it's amazing what he is doing. And then add on Zach Gallen, who I think is at times a certifiable ace. Add in Merrill Kelly, who is a great story, who is also at times a certifiable ace. You've got 3 starting pitchers right now. It's not to say Brandon Pfaadt's magic is going to keep up, but you've got 3 starting pitchers right now in games 1, 2, and 3, where I would be very concerned facing them. And
It's
and the
the thing was surprising because we knew about Gallen and Kelly. I mean that was no surprise, and Fontes came out of nowhere. The bullpen.
the bullpen.
And did bullpen let a guy on base in the last 4 innings of Game 7? I mean, they were just mowing everybody down, and there wasn't a hard hit ball. It's not like a line shot, but it went right to the third baseman. There was nothing hard hit.
I mean,
Uh,
this is the recipe for your team winning in the playoffs. You have a rookie starter who comes out of nowhere and looks elite, and then you have a bullpen that during the regular season was well short of spectacular. I mean, there are some good guys in there now. Paul Sewald, of course, is an excellent veteran pitcher, but most of these guys have no experience whatsoever pitching at these stakes. There are rookies coming out of the bullpen as well. I mean, I think a lot of these playoffs change if anybody would realize that Saul Frank is never going to throw a strike.
yeah,
He goes out there shaking in his boots. He doesn't throw the ball anywhere near the strike zone, and somehow doesn't give up runs. It's the Dodgers did it, and the Phillies did it as well. They go up there. I think at one point when Saul Frank was pitching, he threw 11 straight balls 6 inches or further from the strike zone and got 3 outs. I just it blows my mind. If you were coaching me in Little League and a kid came up to pitch in the playoffs and didn't throw a ball anywhere near home plate every single time he has appeared, you would say, you know what, son, don't swing the bat.
yeah.
Don't swing the bat today. I think we're going to just
His
let this
ball,
guy
his
throw the ball
pitches
around.
must really move, and they must move late.
But it doesn't matter because you know that they're not strikes. It's not like he paints the corner. He paints nothing. He paints the dirt a foot in front of home plate. And these guys just look totally lost on it. And I get it. If he has good stuff, it is probably moving and it's probably moving well. But we have the receipts here. We have the iPads when you go back
Yeah,
in the
it's
dugout.
amazing.
It's crazy. It's unlike anything I've seen. And then there are other bullpen guys. Thompson has come out of nowhere as a guy who can get you 3 innings of shutout ball in the bullpen, which is like every manager's dream. And then you've got Ginkle, who is in the running for funniest last name in Major League Baseball, and that's the only reason I knew who he was before these playoffs started. And he is looking like the setup guy that every manager dreams of. Sewald, who has a tendency to be a little wild, has not been wild. Sewald has looked like Mariano Rivera. He is throwing 93. That's it. These days, I mean, I realize, 93 is still a fast pitch, but these days it's not. These days, you got a guy throwing 93 as your closer, and you kind of got to be worried. He's throwing 93, and these guys are an hour behind it. I mean, and I know, and the announcers talk about this a lot of why Sewald's so effective, and it's because his release point is exactly the same for every pitch, and guys just have no clue what pitch is coming. And as we know, if you are not banging on a trash can, it is a lot harder to hit in Major League Baseball if you don't know what pitch is coming, and especially it's harder when you still don't know when it's halfway to home plate.
Yeah.
I mean, Sewald has just been unbelievable. He has been incredible. That was such a smart pickup, something they desperately needed, and he has come over and really taken, the late innings off the back of Torey Lovullo and shown up. He has shown up. It's been a pleasure to watch him pitch. I'm going to root for anybody who's 33 and older in the playoffs because, it makes me
Yes.
think,
Yes.
makes me think I could still do it. Probably, not the case. But there's something about this Diamondbacks team that reminds me so much of, and this is the main reason I am going to root for the Diamondbacks. The Diamondbacks World Series ring from 2001 is the World Series that I can still picture the most in my head from watching as a kid.
Really?
It is because I was raised by someone in my household to hate the Yankees at an
Ah, yes.
unhealthy level. And to see guys
No,
who
no, a
don't,
healthy level, a healthy level.
yeah. But we grew up in Kentucky. I saw Reds games. Reggie Sanders was a guy I really liked. He goes to Arizona. They win the World Series in 7 games in a walk-off. I mean, I can still picture those games so clearly. Plus, Randy Johnson, we share the same birthday. The guy is an absolute stud, a legend of the game. Kurt Schilling, whatever. I mean, I get it. He's a big reason they won, but I don't like Kurt Schilling. But that 2001 Diamondbacks team, Craig Counsell. I mean, come on. That was the time that America got introduced to maybe the weirdest, worst batting stance in the history of baseball, and he's a World Series hero. We all know him now as the manager of the Brewers, at least for this
You're
week.
talking about Craig Counsell, who, of course, the White Sox are going to hire. Uh, they were just kidding about keeping Pedro Grifals. And yes, he's interviewing with the Mets, I think, today, and the Cleveland's interested, but he's probably going back to Milwaukee. But gosh, the White Sox are probably going to grab it because they'll go out there. One thing about the Diamondbacks, their payroll numbers vary from who's counting what when. But they are 116,
116.
21st in the majors compared to the White Sox 181 and the Rangers 196. Of course, the Rangers have some very expensive free agents. Now, Arizona, I think, will have no former White Sox at the World Series. Seve is the only one that I can think of that's on the roster at all, and he hasn't been on the postseason
No,
rosters.
and he
Which
won't
good
be.
reason. I'm sure he was just there as a third catcher in case somebody got hurt. And he can be brought in if a catcher gets hurt during the
Hey,
series.
he gets the ring. He gets the ring if they win it.
And he gets. And, that's an interesting. You don't only get the ring, you get the money.
Right.
I looked up because I was curious if how much detail I could get on this. It's going to be about $500,000 a share this year. It was a little over that last year. But the players vote. The players who are actually on the World Series team, the 26, vote on who gets shares. Now, the 26 get shares. And some teams are more generous than others, but they tend to give something to anybody who's on the team all year, unless it was a guy who played very badly and they hated. If you were there for 10
Wow.
games, a minor leaguer was there for 10 games, they'll give you 1/20th of a share or 1/15th of a
Yeah,
share too.
yeah.
So you get something. The clubhouse guys get it. Security guys who are around the team get it. Anybody around the team really will normally end up with a share. There have been some interesting cases. There was one a few years ago, and I forget the team now, where a minor league coach in that system had got hit by a line drive. He was coaching first and got hit by a line drive and died. And they gave his wife a full share,
Wow.
kind of thing. So they can do some
That's
really cool
classy.
things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
And
classy.
they can shut guys out too. So you never know. On the other hand, the Rangers have two former White Sox. One left in one of the most notoriously, humongously awful Rick trades ever. When Marcus Semien, and I thought, I kind of remember Semien be kind of stone-handed defensively when he was with the Sox. So I
He
looked it
was
up. He
not great
actually
with us, though.
he had very good numbers, defensive numbers with the Sox, defensive runs saved and that kind of stuff. But obviously he was a very good hitter even then. So he went, and of course Bassitt went for a semi-rental of Jeff Samardzija. And
God.
Samardzija's one accomplishment was he had one of the few names that I had to look it up every time I typed it. I could never remember that
And
spelling for anything.
you couldn't have been in a good mood every time you had to look it up either.
No,
Because you're
not.
looking up how do I spell Samardzija gave up 7 in the first? How do I spell that? Yeah, I mean Marcus Semien. Every time I watch a playoff game with Texas, my head is just spinning with what could it have been like. I when Semien played for the White Sox, I certainly didn't view him as this guy who was going to become a
No,
star.
no, not a superstar.
Um,
No, the good solid player. Yeah.
yeah, he seemed like a White Sox kind of player in a lot of ways. Okay defense and decent hitting. Um, that trade in retrospect is a lot worse than it even was then, and we clocked it as bad then. But I'm a little indifferent on rooting for former White Sox to win World Series rings with other teams. I get that Texas has never won, and we should be wanting teams that have never won to win, but because of the 2001 World Series, I am still supporting the Arizona
Yeah.
Diamondbacks.
In addition to Semien and a guy who I really liked when the White Sox had him, was sorry to see go. And initially it looked like, well, maybe it wasn't that bad a trade, but now it's turning out to be a very bad trade. Dane Dunning, who had
Yeah.
a superb year, his first really, really good year. And, they've got 3 or 4 more years of control. And the guy we got in exchange is gone to the Dodgers and probably gone from baseball. I don't. He'll hang around a little bit, but I don't think he has anything left. Uh, as far as that goes, Lance Lynn is just. I think
Yeah,
he's
I,
gone.
I, I think he's still got something in the tank,
He's
but
at, he's 30, 36 now.
yeah.
Or will be 36 next season. Yeah, maybe, but not much. It's not. And Dunning's got a big future, but I looked at the WAR. This was bWAR because I was in Baseball Reference. Dunning and Semien between them have like one tiny hair's less WAR than the entire White Sox team this year.
Wow. Wow. And that's a team with Luis Robert. So in
Yes,
reality,
yeah, Luis Robert had almost half of the White Sox WAR,
yeah, if you take
and
out
the
Luis
guy whose
Robert,
name we don't say had most of the rest.
wow, unbelievable. Yeah, I mean, I remember you and I not being thrilled that Dane Dunning was going away. We actually were kind of on the Dane Dunning train a little bit. You were more
We were, I
so.
was, yeah.
You were very on the Dane Dunning train. I was on the Dylan Cease train. This is from the time when it was the beginning of me starting to look like a genius, which has then faded, which was the 8 million times I said Dylan Cease is going to become an elite pitcher when he was still had an ERA around 8. He's kind of letting me down on my brilliant predictions lately. But Dane Dunning was really starting to look like he was taking a turn. In fact, that whole starting rotation, if they'd kept them together, might have been different because they actually had a very great camaraderie going. I remember watching those games and seeing Dunning, Cease, and Giolito around each other all the time. And thinking, wow, this could actually be the next great core of White Sox starters. Didn't pan out that way. Dunning is gone. Giolito is gone. Cease, or a version of Cease, is still around. Um, but we got to take our break. But before we do, I just want to hear your World Series prediction.
I'm going to root for the Diamondbacks. I think Texas will win. I'm going to go 7 games though.
7 games. Okay, well, we had 7 games in each championship series for the first time since 2004, including the Phillies' first ever Game 7 in the history of their franchise, which they lost. So they are 0-1 in Game 7s. But it was a rather lackluster playoffs until the championship series.
Right. None of them went to a final game.
No, none of them. And a lot of them were sweeps. So I think this could definitely go 7 as well. I hope it does. I think we're looking at one of potentially the lowest TV rated World Series of my lifetime. I'm sure that the executives at Fox or whoever were praying that Philadelphia was going to come back in that last game and keep the Arizona team that no one anywhere else in the country knows exists But yeah, I am going to go
Yeah, Dallas Fort
Diamondbacks.
Worth is a big market. It's not a top three market or even a top
Right.
four where Philadelphia comes in, but it's five or six. It's a big TV market. Arizona, on the other hand, ooh.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, Texas has a good market, and being in the World Series. Last time Texas was in the World Series is another World Series I vividly remember. As I the Jeff Awards were happening. Those are the Chicago version of the Tonys, and in lieu of sitting in the theater and watching them, I sat at the bar alone and watched the Rangers give up their Game 6 lead en route to the Cardinals winning the World Series and that incredible comeback from the Cardinals. I think David Freese is still a name that Texas Rangers fans hear whispered into their ears as they drift off into the night. I think he will haunt Rangers fans forever. I'm going to go Diamondbacks in 6. Uh,
Whoa.
I think Diamondbacks are going to do it in 6. I wish they could finish it off in Arizona, but I don't think they will. I think they will win the World Series. I think we will have 2 World Series within 4 years, one at Globe Life Field, not by the Rangers. That is my bold prediction. But let's take our break here. When we come back, we'll talk a little baseball television that you witnessed last night and that I need to watch. Some of you might know what we're talking about, but hang in there. We'll be right back on Sharing Sox. Welcome back to Sharing Sox. We talked World Series and White Sox players playing in them or not playing in them. But tell me a little bit about the documentary you watched last night.
Um, it's gotten a lot of publicity, especially among White Sox fans. Of course, the Saint of Second Chances is actually about Mike Veeck, Bill Veeck's son. He's the key to it, although there's a lot about Bill in there, which would give me a chance to tell my great Bill Veeck story, except I just told it on another Southside Sox podcast as a story one with Brett and Mark Liptak. So I won't do it on 2 in a row within a few days. I'll save that because I really love that story. But it's a very interesting documentary. Got some actors playing parts in it, it's where it's not strictly newsreel footage kind of thing. And Mike himself does a lot of the talking being interviewed. But I will, since you have not watched it, I would say for White Sox fans, it is worth watching, even though Mike, other than the horror of Disco Demolition Night, which basically ended his major league career, except for a very brief moment later, it almost ended the White Sox for that matter. And then sent his poor dad, who was probably the greatest owner from the point of view of being a fan's owner in the history of the game. And he didn't have any money, so he wasn't a great owner from winning, but just from being concerned about fans. But anyhow, I just about ended his time as well, like his second time in ownership of the Sox. But at any rate, I will warn you. I will not tell you why, but I will warn you: have a hanky handy before it's over.
Because of seasonal allergies?
No, not in California because you don't have seasons. But
True,
just
true.
just their content at the end is very sad. So, but
Okay.
I will just say that. But overall, the thing it's very interesting, especially all the things he did in the minor leagues that we know from having lived in Dayton for so long, where we had a very, very successful minor league team, the Dayton Dragons, a Reds single A team. All this screwball stuff that the minor leagues do in the way of publicity stunts to try to get people into the stands. And the Dragons didn't have to do them as much because they sold out, I think, their first 9 years in a row. But most do. Most have to go to bizarre things. One of Mike's things was because one of the teams that he owned was their mascot was what was, and it was a porcine kind of name. So a pig would carry the baseballs out to the umpire and blow bags on its back. That kind of thing was very
I
eye-catching.
mean, as the audience, you know, luring goes, having a pig bring out the baseballs is one of the cooler ones I've actually ever heard of.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean that's not even loud and obnoxious.
and and pigs, big fans of mud, so they were probably very comfortable with a Delaware River mud rubbed baseball. They probably felt right at home bringing those out. Not sure there's a
I
lot
don't
of
know that
pigs rolling
I
around
don't
in
know
there.
that the low level minors rate Delaware River mud. I think that goes to the majors, but some other mud, I'm sure. Geez,
Yeah, they probably
this
they
was in St. Paul, so it's probably Mississippi River that they
Yeah,
used for it.
Costco discount mud for sure. Yeah. Well, if you would like, check out that documentary. We are not going to say where you can see it. And if you would like to
It is
check it
on a
out,
streaming service you have to pay for.
that is a Struck company.
We
So
would name it, except SAG is on strike against it, and half of this team is SAG,
yes. So
and the other is a SAG sympathizer.
my advice would be keep an eye on the news, and as soon as the strike is over, there's a great documentary about the White Sox for you to stream. I want to go back to something in the first half where you joked about the White Sox potentially getting Craig Counsell as a manager. I realize that is just a joke. There's been no rumblings
That's all it
of
is.
this whatsoever. Do you think there's a world where that could actually happen?
Where they got Craig Counsell, or where they
Yeah.
just got some other manager.
Because Craig Counsell is now allowed to take interviews. The Brewers had said that they were going to keep him, but much like with Bob Melvin, who is now in San Francisco, Counsell is on the open market as a manager, technically. Do you think there's a world where if Craig Counsell says, I would coach the Chicago White Sox, that they keep Pedro Grifol and don't go for Craig Counsell?
I don't think there is a world in which Craig Counsell, who is a very smart guy, and obviously working in Milwaukee all these years, has been very close to Chicago and Chicago media. I don't think there's a world where he would come to Chicago.
Okay.
I don't know that, even if he and Chris Getz happen to go way back and used to be drinking buddies in college or something. Uh, I don't think he comes because the organization is so dysfunctional, and the entire major leagues know how dysfunctional this organization is. Now, the one case could be if Jerry would be, you know, you know, 6 feet under
Yeah.
by the time the interview comes. But that's not going to happen. He's going to live to be at least 130. So
Because of the debacle of the last few years through La Russa and then through Grifol, and of course everybody being in the know on how dysfunctional everything about this organization is. Do you see a world in the next 5 years in which we can even land a marquee manager of any kind
or general manager.
or general manager?
I mean, I think part of people talk when Reinsdorf was saying, "Well, I know who all the other prospects for the GM job would be." So I know them all. There's no need to talk to them. I think the reason, and nobody ever said this, but I think the reason that there was no need to talk to him was he knew they wouldn't come.
Yeah.
He knew
Well,
none of these people who are
the
really
good
good.
ones certainly
James
wouldn't.
Click. I was from the moment James Click was dropped by Houston last year. James Click, we got to get James Click. Why would James Click come here? You know, and even on a much, I don't think she's nearly as good as James Click, but Kim Ang, why would she come here? She's left Miami because of dispute over control. She'd have no control here under Reinsdorf, nothing.
Yeah.
Uh,
And
and it's
GMs like control.
and
GMs
it's
like
yeah,
control.
yeah, and it's the same. All these guys who are bouncing around Boston, and it's got a new GM, and it's going there. It's what, 5 or 6 openings around the majors, and all the names that are being thrown. I know at first when the firings finally came of Williams and Hahn, they were going, well, let's get Jed Hoyer. Well, Hoyer's only 8 miles up the road. He knows what's going on down here.
Yeah.
They're not coming to Chicago, not as long as Jerry's there. Uh, it's not going to happen. There's no yes, if you offer them $100 million a year and Yeah, and a 5-year unbreakable contract, sure, they will be there, but that's
I
not
mean,
going to happen either.
the White Sox wouldn't give Shohei Ohtani $40 million a year. So the chances that they're going to pay a reputable GM enough to lure them into the mess that is the White Sox seems extremely unlikely. So where does a team go when they can't get a good GM and they can't get an elite manager? When
They
is
go to
your next?
101 losses.
Yeah, like and I just don't see, and I think you're right, and I, of course, don't wish that level of ill will on anyone. But I think as long as this is a Reinsdorf team and Reinsdorf is in the picture, we will not get a good GM. We will not get a good manager. I mean, we could go out there and do it if we really needed to. You could pay these people enough to do this, but you have to be interested in winning. I think there's a world where there's a price that does get you Craig Counsell. I think there's a price that does get you some of these guys who we
But of
know
course,
are very good
the
at
other thing,
this.
with particularly from the manager's point of view, a general manager coming in could have a chance at least to build a team.
Right,
I mean, you're
right.
rock bottom, and so they can build it from the bottom up and get credit for that and deserve credit for that. A manager's coming in to a team that stinks, that is near the bottom in every possible category of hitting, pitching, and fielding, that has nobody coming up from the minors except Colson Montgomery. Just nobody else. Even with all the pitchers that were traded away last year, the guys we got in return, the streaming might be pretty good. That may be it. Uh,
Yeah,
Manager comes in, and then the manager comes in. Now he's not going to get credit if they go from 101 wins to 95, which is the best he could do. you know, it's
yeah.
it isn't it really. Managers like to have good players. It helps a lot.
It helps a lot. I mean, this is only a this is a situation where you're only getting someone great if they find themselves unemployed and they for some reason tell themselves, I'm going to be the guy that's going to take this challenge and I'm going to try to do it. But usually guys don't do that when there's no one in the pipeline.
No,
It
no,
you
yeah,
do
they
see
have
it
something coming up.
occasionally.
Now, Mark Liptak, during that history podcast I was talking about, predicted that if things go as expected in 2024, that Grifol will be out by the All-Star break. But my guess is if he's out, it'll be Charlie Montoya. I mean, he's still the bench coach, I believe. They haven't fired
Yeah.
him. So he'll just move up and they won't have anybody from outside doing anything, which is what's new with that.
And as you said moments ago, it doesn't matter if you don't have any good players. I mean, not that we don't have any good players, but if you can't field a full good team, which we can't.
No, or coming anywhere close. I looked this morning, and we're recording this, I say Thursday before the World Series starts. Uh, I just looked at the stats for the Rangers on Baseball Reference, and they do it by position for the batters. And I looked through it. If you did an all-star team of Rangers and White Sox, there would be one White Sox player on that team, or position players. I mean, you get the pitchers and mix and
Yeah,
match
yeah.
because eventually, some White Sox will work into it. Uh, One, obviously, Louis Strawberry Jr. No other White Sox player would be the starter of an all-star team made up of Texas Rangers and Chicago White Sox. None.
Wow. And I'm not sure that many White Sox players would be on an all-star Diamondback team either.
No,
It
probably not. I didn't look at that, but I agree. There might be. Well, I don't know who else. Uh, I, 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 who else?
yeah.
There's no position player we've got better than average, other than Luis. Historically, Tim, but only offensively, not defensively. Uh,
Yeah,
but not certainly not last year. I mean, it was -4, -2 WAR, just horrible. Uh,
exactly.
so yeah, I mean, there's nothing. And Reinsdorf's already saying he said, I'm not getting Shohei Ohtani, which apparently was against the rules, so presumably gets fined. But um, I think when he says that, it means more than we're not getting Shohei Ohtani. It means we're not doing anything
Yeah, if you're coming out,
outside of our long, long, long time, 40-year long comfort zone.
yeah, I mean, if you're breaking the rules to come out and say we're not even going to try for Otani, which we obviously know they're not getting Otani, but if you're going to break the rules to come out and say that, what you're really saying is I'm not opening my wallet, so don't get your expectations pointed in that direction.
I said no 10-year contracts for pitchers. I don't know if there any 10-year contracts for pitchers.
I can't imagine there's a 10-year. Maybe Steven Strasburg had a 10-year early, I mean, years and years and years
Maybe
ago.
an extension kind of thing.
Um, but I mean, signing a
How
pitcher
long?
to a
How long was
10-year,
Scherzer?
not 10.
No,
I mean, no, no. But also, you have to remember, and this is, again, Reinsdorf thinking, is to say, I'm not giving 10 years to a pitcher. Well, nobody who's giving Otani this contract is hiring him thinking we're getting 10 years of pitching out of Shohei Otani. People don't know if we're getting any years of pitching out of Shohei Otani. Now, likely he will come back as a pitcher and try it in 2025. But to be so tunnel visioned on that, when you are actually talking about getting the best hitter in the game, it's not like signing Scherzer to, if you were to say, oh, we'll give Scherzer a 10-year deal. That's a guy who's never going to bat. That is a guy who is only going to pitch. With Shohei Ohtani, you could get Scherzer level pitching back starting in 2025. But worst case scenario is you are going to get a Jordan Alvarez level DH and a guy who is in his absolute prime, and I think will be able to hit the ball with the best of them for the next 10 years. I mean, this is the guy with the best work ethic in the game. He's got his head on his shoulders. He's an absolute stud on and off the field. Why that type of thinking of saying, I'm not going to give this to a pitcher is exactly what
and
is wrong about
he's
Reinsdorf.
probably a pretty good outfielder. We haven't seen him do that much at
That's the
all in
other
recent years.
that, and he is a good outfielder. You put him in right field, even if he can't pitch, he should be able to play in the field after the second Tommy John. This is not a guy where you are saying I'm not going to give up 10 years of a contract to a pitcher who may not make it 10 years. You're hiring an elite hitter for 10 years, possibly an elite fielder for 10 years, and possibly a Cy Young pitcher for part of that. You just don't know. But I agree. Him coming out and saying we're not doing that was not about Ohtani. We obviously knew they weren't going to get Ohtani. Our biggest contract in history is Andrew Benintendi, which is not even $100 million contract. So there is
Now,
no
in
way.
fairness, the Pirates have never had $100 million contract either, so it's not like the White Sox are long.
There you go. However, the Pirates are likely going to have $100 million contracts in their near future because they have actually built a team with great prospects. The Pirates, here's a hot take. The Pirates are going to win a playoff series before the White Sox. And I have no doubt in my mind about that. I don't have one smidgen of doubt that the Pirates are going to win a playoff series before the Chicago White Sox. We will bookmark this episode so I can come back.
We better.
And talk about that because I do think if the White Sox don't get in the way of the Pirates by breaking their stars' legs again, then the Pirates are going to win a playoff series before the White Sox. There are very few teams out there that I wouldn't make that bet about. But I do feel confident. The Rockies, I think I'm not picking, but the Pirates, I do think are going to win.
That's the A's.
The
Yeah, I
A's,
think Kansas City very well may.
Kansas City definitely could with the guys they have coming up, the young guys. That is all the time we have for today. Do you have any final thoughts before we sign off?
Not well. I'm wearing. You can't see. I'm wearing a White Sox World Series shirt from 2005. Just thought for historical purposes, I'd bring that up.
Yes, I remember that. A World Series that happened half of my life ago. Very, very excited to hold on to that. Well, you heard it here first. The Geezer has Texas in 7. I have Arizona in 6. We will catch up with you on the other end of this World Series and talk about how incredible my 6-game prediction was. I'm really looking forward to it. Thanks for listening, and we will see you after the World Series right here on Sharing Sox.